nivasati dehe tavat prachati kushalam gehe gatavati vayo deha paye bharya bebhyati tasmin kaye yavat pavano nivasati dehe tavat prachati kushalam gehe gatavati vayo deha paye bharya bebhyati tasmin kaye. Now the verses 6, 7 and 8 are talking about an attachment to the physical body. Verse 7 talks about attachment to the mind, and verse 8 talks about attachment to the intellect. And then verse 9, he gives us the very famous ladder of rise of a spiritual sadhana. What is the ladder of rise? Okay, this is the thought flow of the next few verses. Now, what here he's saying here is, as long as breath lasts in the body, so long there is inquiry of welfare at home. Yavat tatvat. Once breath leaves and body decays, even the wise fears the same body. Gatavati vayo deha paye bharya bibhyati. She fears the very same body. Oh. As I've said, this verse is talking about attachment to the body. Now, before we just get into the finer details of the message is very clear. But once you understand what's said, you'll know it's not the obvious what he's talking about. What he's talking about here is the exaggerated value you give yourself to the physical body. Now, the concept here we must understand is the concept of attachment. Now, have we discussed this concept of attachment in this classroom? Because I know yesterday morning I was talking about it in another class, and there's some familiar faces here, so I keep getting confused. Have we spoken about, Hirenji, did we discuss about the concept of attachment here?
No, I was not in the class.
Last
so
week.
I missed last week. And also beyond that, I was not in any class. I came back here after missing the last class in 2 weeks' time.
All right. I think we've not spoken about it last week in the US class, but Srini, you were there? No. Did we speak about it? No, I don't want to be repetitive. That's right. Mickey G?
Yeah, I was there last week. You did talk about the basic nature of transaction. You said that, for example, as long as there is a wealth or a particular benefit to be derived, you feel that sense of attachment. But you cautioned us about being careful about it. So in that sense, yes.
Yeah, but not in the context of explaining what is attachment, isn't it, per se?
No, okay. We did not discuss it.
We haven't discussed. Fair enough. That's nice. Okay. So as the theme of the next few verses is talking about attachment. So I would like to engage those of you who are new to the concept. What is your understanding of attachment? So how would you go about actually defining attachment? What is attachment? Sriniji, any idea?
Yeah, I think, good morning, Guruji. I
Morning.
think my view of understanding what is attachment is when a human being, if you take the context of human beings in this case, is when you get possessive in one sense, is one way to think about it. There is a deep sense of intense love or care, and therefore there is an expectation that it's mutual. That again I see as attachment. That's how I see attachment as. Um, and it's almost that since you think you're attached to this other person, you tend to start forgiving things which may not be right, and you start being to a point of condoning even when the person is off, not doing the right thing. Because you're so well attached, you seem to be condoning all those and forgiving all those. That's what I see as attachment.
Right. Not wrong. Not wrong. So the very first thing you said, attachment is, you said, is something as possessiveness, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if I would take that, attachment is fundamentally, you must understand, attachment is a mental quality. It is not a physical practice. It's a mental attitude you establish to things and beings. So when the scriptures, when the Shastras say that you must live a life of detachment, now the concept of detachment is often misunderstood. If you were to be understanding detachment as a physical separation from your possessions, from your home, from your near and dear, if that's what the scriptures are advocating, in fact, the scriptures are advocating us to live a life of detachment. But if detachment were to be understood as a physical practice, how many of us are in a position to walk away from all of our attachments? Anyone? No. None of us are willing to let go of our belongings, are near and dear. No, they're very, very dear to us. So it's impractical. So please understand, for once, please be very clear with the understanding that attachment or detachment is a mental discipline, not a physical state. So if it is a mental state, what is attachment? Attachment is literally where you have developed an attitude of possessiveness to your possessions. It's a possessive attitude. When you say it's a possessive attitude, whenever you have this possessive attitude, what happens is you lose the status of the possessor. Strangely so, the possessor becomes the possessed. I am the possessor, the objects are possessed. I am the master, they are meant to serve me. But the moment I am attached to the objects or beings, I become the possessed. They are possessing me. So your family is possessing me, your name is possessing me, your reputation is possessing me, your wealth is possessing me, your car is possessing you. Why? Because anything happens to the object of attachment happens to you. You go back in the morning and you realize, you go out into the car park, or where you park your car, and you realize that somebody has played pranks and he has scratched your car. How does it just derail you mentally? Disturb all of us are to a certain extent, but to what extent you're affected depends on the degree of your attachment. But if you are detached to it, you say what it is, it takes to be repainted, so we'll send it for body work and get it done. What is the big deal worrying about it? And when you know the company is going to pay for it, it's a company car, it actually needed repainting. So you say, good, somebody did it. You know, never mind. We'll get the complete entire car repainted now. It will be a new car, even new condition. So the attitude, how you relate to it, if you're detached to it, there's no problem. If you're attached to it, there's a lot of problem. So attachment is a mental bondage. Attachment is where your thoughts are constantly going towards something in particular. Attachment is where something consumes you mentally. And why does it consume you? Because you have a deep value for it. I don't want to go out of context because it's a vast concept. And I want to discuss it in the context of the text. So attachment is a mental bondage where you bind yourself to the objects and beings, you develop a possessiveness towards it, and you start worshipping it literally. And why do you do so? Because you have a mental value for it. Now the next in the context, I'm always keeping in mind the context. Now, when you are attached to something, what happens? Now, some of you have heard what I've just said. If it's very new to you, you should still be able to think along with me. But when you are attached to something, what does it do to you? Rajiv ji, when you're attached, what does it do to you?
Yeah, you just become too dependent on that thing, like you said, that you become the possessed. So anything that happens to the thing which you think that you possess disturbs you a lot, So that's what I think you are getting at.
Yes, we have mentioned that. What else happens when you are attached to, which I have not mentioned? If you think along with me, you'll be able to perhaps take a leap forward from there. What happens when you are attached to something? I think Sheila ji.
Be cared by the person.
Sorry, ma.
Attachment is where we start caring for a person and we also expect that we should also be cared. It's like a two-way relationship where we want somebody to care for us, get that feeling that yes, someone is there who looks up for us, who cares for us, and we also want to do the same.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we spoke about that a little earlier, and now I'm talking about attachment, isn't it? Attachment. Can you recap what I've just said on attachment?
That's what you said, no? That we should be caring for someone, that feeling that somebody is there for us.
No. See, we did speak of it a little earlier. We just spoke about attachment. What it does is it makes you possessive. Attachment is a mental bondage. Attachment makes you dependent. Even Rajiv, you just said that attachment makes you dependent. Attachment causes a lot of sorrow and suffering. And further to that, what else attachment does? I was asking. No, fair enough, Ma. What you said is perfect. Right. Yeah, Vijay, go ahead, please.
Since it fills your mind and makes you unstable very easily and also increases your sense of power and ego.
Yes, it consumes your mind. It makes you egoistic. In fact, if I can take from that statement, when your mind is consumed with something, what does it do? Your mind, doesn't it get preoccupied with it?
It becomes restless and doesn't have time to think of anything else.
Correct. It becomes restless. It is unavailable for anything else. Now, what is the text we are doing now? What is the text we are doing? Vijay Raghavanji. This will be the problem if you attend more than one class. Don't know which text it is.
Oh, are you referring to Bhaja Govindam verse 6?
Yeah,
Okay.
we are doing Bhaja Govindam.
I didn't understand the question anyway.
I'm sorry, that's all right. That's all right. Sorry for that. Bhaja Govindam. What does Bhaja Govindam means? Bhaja Govinda. Seek Govinda. Seek the truth. Seek the higher. The text is appealing to us to seek something higher. All right. Now, when your mind develops an attachment to something, that attachment limits you from thinking anything beyond it. You can't see anything beyond it. You can't pursue anything other than it. So if you want to seek the higher, seek Govinda, it is imperative that you must develop an attitude of detachment to all that you're dealing with. Understand the limitation of what all the world has to offer, and then only you'll be able to appreciate something beyond it. You will see that very clearly as we get into the intricacies of the verse. So attachment is a mental bondage. It's a becoming. It causes because of your own mental identification with things and beings. It makes you a slave. You become possessive. It causes a great sorrow and suffering. It binds you. It limits your thought. It defines you. In fact, the law of attachment, it's rather important you take a note that there's a law which defines this. The law of attachment is as you think, so you become. So you're defined by your thoughts. Where your thoughts are, you become that. Now, the verse 6 is saying, as long as breath lasts in this body, so long there would be inquiry of welfare at home. Once breath leaves and decays, the wife fears the very same body. Now, what here is talking about attachment to the physical body. Now, when you talk of attachment to the physical body, there are two types of people in the world. One type of people are those who give too much value to the physical body, too much fuss, too much importance to this physique. The other set of people have complete disregard. They have neglected the body. So one kind of people are doing what is known as body worship. Everything that they do, they are only indulging, constantly pampering. They're giving into the senses, giving into the demands of the body. So if you do body worship, where would you go? Vanitama, if you're doing body worship, where would you go? I don't mean personal to you. I'm generally asking a general question. I do not know. I need to get updated. So when somebody is doing body worship, where would they go?
My husband Anand says to the spa.
Okay. Where else would they
I have
go?
a question. Why do you always say attachment is bad? Attachment can also bring you happiness.
Example?
I mean, you can be attached to your wife and be happy.
Sir, that is, my God, it baffles me when you say that, sir.
Huh?
Tell me one person who has found happiness in that. You say myself, huh?
No, I'm just asking you a question.
Sorry?
I'm just asking you a question. This is my first class, so I'm starting at ground zero.
But you seem to have reached a very high level. So the ground zero is a very high level, you know. No, see, are you serious with the question?
No, I'm very serious because I kept saying attachment can be happiness. And then you said attachment is bad.
See, what attachment does is, as I've said, principally, attachment is you're becoming what you are identifying with. Take an example. If you're identifying with your wealth and your investments, and when the stock market is fluctuating and the market is not doing well and there is a substantial loss of your investments, a banker or a person who is involved with his financials, it's not going to cause him any peace or comfort. It's going to be constantly bothering him because his investments are not doing well. He'll not be able to eat. He'll not be able to talk. He'll not be able to concentrate. He will not be able to sleep. He can't do anything. Why? Because he's lost his sense of composure. I know a student of mine who used to tell that her husband constantly gets up at odd hours. And he just gets up, he puts on the computer, goes into the stock market and see whether all his investments are safe and sound. He'll get up at 1 o'clock. You and I may get up to go to the washroom, but he gets up, something wakes him up. And she says he just got paranoid. He's so attached to his wealth and his investments, it causes him sleepless nights. Now, yet you and I know, I do not know, I suppose you would know. I don't know whether you know, that the nature of stock market is, if you want to know what is the nature of stock market, you put on one of this, I think this Bloomberg, am I right? Harish ji? Correct, huh? One of these television channels or this Bloomberg where they keep showing all the stock markets that keep scrolling. What do you see? Harish ji, what do you see? I only remember seeing that. I don't see anything other than that.
You see numbers with a lot of arrows upwards and downwards, more downwards and red.
That is being prejudiced. Don't say that. But you would see numbers and arrows, green up, red down, green up, red down. That's all I saw, and that's all I follow. Other than that, I don't follow anything. Now, isn't that the inevitable nature of the stock market? There will be many, many factors that influence the stock over which you and I have no control. What the President Trump is saying, how the elections are going, is I have an influence on the stock market. If one country decides to bomb one country, it has an effect on the stock market. If there is a natural calamity, it has an effect on stock market. There's so many factors over which you have no control. So if you're attached to wealth, wealth becomes a cause of sorrow and misery, if you're attached. But if you're detached to wealth, wealth is a commodity with which you can exchange with various objects and things. It's only it can be exchanged. Iron and gold are good for buying iron and gold, that's all. So you can get many things with this wealth. So you understand its role in life, you understand its limitation, you understand it serves a purpose, but you don't peg your life onto it as if your life pings on that. So attachment is to understand things, what they are, what they're subjected to, understand their limitation, and you don't give a black market value. So attachment is giving a black market value to something. A child is so attached to the toy, if the toy breaks, you can't go and console the child and say, never mind. You do not know what your worth is. I can actually buy you the toy shop. Why are you being so affected by a toy being broken? I'll buy you a new toy, better toy than this. The child says, no, I only want that toy. Why is a child suffering? Anandji, attachment to that toy, isn't it?
Correct.
So if you look at it from that perspective, attachment binds you, it subjects you to whatever you are attached to the object of attachment. So whatever happens to the object of attachment happens to you. So if your wife smiles at you, you're happy. If your wife frowns at you, you know the story. Rest of the story, ... You know, sir?
You still have to be happy.
You still have to be happy. Well, you have no choice, correct. You, sir, you don't need any more Bhaja Govindam, sir. You are already at a different level, sir. So does that clarify, Anandji? So attachment has, in the Shastras, from their perspective, it has a negative connotation. But vis-a-vis, the opposite of attachment is to have an attitude of detachment, which is exactly the opposite. Where you are able to establish that association, relationship, but yet you are never affected by anything, wherever you are. You play the game, but yet you understand game or sport means there is going to be a winner and loser. You will go across and you congratulate the winner that you played a better game, but yet you played to win, but you understand there's only one winner. So you're detached to the fruits of action, yet you're given your best. So that spirit of camaraderie, that spirit of lightheartedness, the spirit of not getting carried away with anything is detachment. You have a sense of objectivity. You have a sense of balance and composure. That is when you are detached. Let's say Sriniji, if your maid in the house, she breaks, you had very special guests over the weekend, let's say, and you have chosen to use the very special crockery, an expensive chinaware, and post cleanup, one of the chinaware breaks. How do you handle that, sir? It's an expensive one.
Well, the typical reaction is because you're attached to it, you have anger. And and you manifest your anger by shouting at that person or showing your displeasure.
It could be the maid, it could be your child, it could be anybody, but the fact that you're attached to it causes pain, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But when you understand that the life of a chinaware is one slip, that's all its life is. That's the reality of it. You have to accept it. So whatever you attach to it causes pain. Whatever it is subjected to, you go through it. It binds you. It causes enormous pain. And sadly, we're attached to everything.
So Guruji, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is it that when you're attached, you're saying it causes pain, or is it just that the mind becomes irrational? I mean, one of the manifestations could be pain. It just becomes irrational is what I think.
Irrational is the very process of getting attachment, isn't it? Attachment happens at the level of your mind. And mind is an irrational element. And that's where your attachment has created. Unknowingly, unconsciously, ignorantly, you have developed an attachment for it. Oh, I like that. And if you're able to get what you want, and that's it, you've got attached to the thought itself. I want to do that. And when you are attached, obsessed to a particular thought, you're not able to think anything other than that, isn't it? So attachment can be at the thought level. Attachment is at different levels, actually. So if you're obsessed with something, you're not able to appreciate another idea from someone. You're not able to take a different opinion. Then it causes a lot of conflict in views because the other person thinks differently. Why are you not able to receive another person's opinion? Because of your attachment to your opinion. I think this is the right thing, or this is the only thing to do. And then creates conflict. So attachment always has a lot of consequences. And one is it always makes you restless. So it is an irrational, but then we pay the price, constantly pay the price of sorrow and suffering. Thank you. You're not wrong to say attachment is synonymous to sorrow and suffering. Wherever there is sorrow and suffering, I would only say attachment. I would go the other way. Are you okay, Sriniji? Right. Yeah, Mikiji, you want to say something?
No, Guruji, firstly, I agree. I think what you're saying is making a lot of sense. Just two aspects I was thinking. One is that in management, at least in organizational theory, is this concept of in order to gain control, you have to give up control. Because there's all the evidence to show that people who tend to be controlling in the organization tend to lose control. In fact, they get a lot of bad news and they seem to not be able to cope with it. Whereas somehow the best leaders are those who give up control, point only to the direction. So that's a kind of a linked concept that struck me. And the other part I thought was that actually when you are attached to something, it seems to move away from you. At least on human relations, a lot of children I find who are raised with over-loving tend to become less dependent on themselves. And eventually they don't like the idea that they were not tightly guided. Whereas the other way around, of parents who, it's not lack of love, but it's more rational discipline. They seem to do better. So I know I'm sounding fuzzy, but yeah, thanks.
No. In fact, you have spelled it out so beautifully. In fact, extending the law of attachment. Swami Ramatirtha, he spells it out so beautifully. It might come as a shocker, but these are the words. These are exactly he says, and you are saying that. Where you have an attachment, sorrow and suffering is inevitable, as you said. You want to grab and control and be a master. Actually, you lose it. You become unpopular, and then there's a natural backlash. It revolts because you are going against the law of nature. It's the natural law of life. You're going. It's an unnatural way of influencing. So management jargons may be different, but the principles are there. It's the same. And secondly, you said that when you get attached to something, you lose your object of attachment or your being. You lose it. This is the law. The moment you attach to something, you lose it. In fact, the only way, that's what Swami Ramatirtha says, the only way to gain anything is to lose it. If you're able to appreciate that in the context, the only way to gain anything in life is to lose it. These are the famous words of the great Ramatirtha. And some of you who are able to appreciate, look at it from that window, you will be completely floored how true it is. In every aspect of life, whether be it relationship, whether be it pursuing anything in life you want, the moment you let go, you will get back. The moment you want to grab hold of it, you lose it. And so much so, he says, if you are attached to your son, it causes separation. If you're attached to your child, they don't want you. They're suffocated. What suffocates is not pure love. Please remember, it's not the love that suffocates relationship. It is attachment and selfishness that suffocates relationship. Other person doesn't want to be with you. So children don't want to be with parents. Why? It is the selfishness in the relationship. And he further says, I hope you're ready for it. If you're attached to your child will be dropped dead, he says. He'll be forcibly taken away from you. So what separates is your attachment. I don't know how many of you are ready for the last part of that. I literally see it. It's like it's writing on the walls. It's there. I see it happening every time. And all the time I keep telling people who constantly come and seek my advice, let go. Let them be what they are. Respect their freedom. Respect their personality. Don't be a piggyback. Constantly, almost like then it becomes like an albatross on their neck. All the time sulking. All the time there's no. They can't have a normal talk with each other. They can't talk. The relationship becomes so artificial. There's no love at all. It's so profound. This concept is actually destroying lives of people. We don't understand how it's happening. It's happening moment to moment. We don't understand it. Yeah, Miki ji.
Sorry, Guruji, I'm talking so much. I really apologize. But one thing struck me from your first lecture was when you talked about sport, is that anybody who plays golf or tennis, the difference between a real professional and a beginner is that the professional's grip is very light. In all these sports, even in golf, the grip has to be light. So like Jack Nicklaus, the great golfer, used to say, hold a club like you're holding a live bird in your hand. If you hold it tight, the bird will die. So you should not be afraid to lose the club. It'll never leave your hand, but keep it very light. Keep your wrist loose, keep your body. And that somehow it's a distant analogy, but tennis, I'm told, is the same thing, is that, it's a very light, you see Federer play. He's not that, he's almost like he's not trying hard, So that's what I'm.
Absolutely. It's that once you have this perception, as you're able to appreciate, you'll see in every aspect of life, isn't it? Very true. Don't we take the example of even when you're a charioteer holding the reins, if you pull the reins hard, you halt. If you let go of the reins, the horses run helter-skelter. So you've got to hold the reins just enough in control that they know that they are in hold, and yet not strong enough that you're withholding it, isn't it? It is just that, in fact, that is known as, what do you call that, Nikki ji? That is known as the middle path.
Right.
The other extremity is either you are extremely tamasic or extremely rajasic. Tamas is unconcerned. Rajas is attachment, which is too concerned. These are the two extremities. Either you are unconcerned or overly concerned. Sattva is where you develop an unconcerned concern. There is a concern, but yet you're unconcerned. That is sattva. That is the middle path. That's what is a life of detachment. Anandji, if you want to differentiate, tamas is completely unconcerned, where you are not bothered at all, reckless. Rajas is where you're overly concerned. You get so paranoid over it. It's attachment. Sattva is where there is an observedness. You look at it, but you take a vantage point and you have an overview of it. You have a panoramic view of the whole things, but you let things be as they are. You're unconcerned. You're way above all those things. Hirenji, able to follow Ji?
Yeah, I liked your statement, unconcerned concern. That is the essence of it. Basically, we are not completely out of it. We are concerned about it, but not holding back somebody's progress or thought process. So that is where we teach self-reliance, probably to the children. And so that statement was very good, unconcerned concern.
Yeah. Now, glad you said that. It's a very profound ideology, concept. Now, when can you be unconcerned? When can you be unconcernedly concerned? Rather, it's not, if you take by one, see, unconcerned by itself is tamas.
Yes.
In fact, you got to be careful. Many people who think they are perfect are actually tamasic. So tamas mocks sattva. Remember this. In spiritual terms, in technical terms, tamasic people think they're actually sattvic. It's wrong. So tamasic people think they attain that state of unconcernedness. It's not unconcerned, it's recklessness. But an unconcerned concern is a dynamic state, a very dynamic state, you know. So how does one develop this unconcerned concern to everything in life? To name, fame, family, position, money, status, everything you have, you're in with it, you're dealing with it, you're dynamically acting, yet there's an unconcerned concern. Yet you're above it. Everything, every aspect of life. Name may come, name may go. Wealth may come, wealth may go. Love may come, love may go. Men may come, men may go. But you are unconcernedly concerned to all the procession of things that's happening. You know, it's like you stand in the balcony. Suddenly you see in the morning there is a procession of a marriage party going on. A huge procession, so much of exuberance and joy and fun, a marriage procession. A few hours later, there's a very sober procession of a death, a funeral procession going on. But you're watching from the balcony of truth. You watch the procession of joy, the procession of sorrow, but you have got nothing to do with joy. You have got nothing to do with sorrow. You have got nothing to do with profit. You have got nothing to do with loss. You have got nothing to do with the ups and downs, with all the vicissitudes of life, but you remain unconcerned because you are from the balcony of truth. You are detached. This is detachment. Now, you and I must cultivate this attitude of detachment if you want to enjoy the exuberance of life, enjoy what life is meant for. Life is meant to give you the joy and happiness and satisfaction. Must enjoy that. In fact, detachment is bliss. Attachment is sorrow. So how does one develop this unconcerned concern? Hirenji, I'm sorry I had to explain the question, or I just clarified it so that you're able to understand what it is.
Well, that's where not being, I mean, as you said before, or the text says before, that nobody is saying that you shouldn't possess things or you shouldn't have things.
Correct.
But even if you have that, but not being possessive of it, not being attached to it, whether then you lose it, you don't feel sorrow. And if you get a little more, you don't have to be getting elated about it. So that is where the detachment comes in.
Perfectly described. But how does one cultivate it?
But by the way of living a sattvic life.
I'm sorry, sir?
By living a way of sattvic life.
Sattvic life, right? Sattvic life. Yeah. But I'm looking at that takeaway, the tool or methodology or applicability. How do I get on to that mode of functioning? How do I learn to develop that spirit of detachment? What is advice? Now, I get what you're saying, sir. Let's get somebody else. Vijay Raghavanji, you wanted to say something, but if you could, I can bring you into this context. How does one develop this unconcerned concern?
Guruji, I think at the end of the day, do anything which you want to do with passion, but don't get attached to the result. Because, I mean, if you, in terms of actions, if you don't, it's a personal, feeling anyway. If you don't have a sense of attachment to an action, generating passion to do it well, generating an intensity of action to do it, I don't know whether it's possible anyway. And so long as we still do that in that fashion, but not worry about what comes out of it, I think it's a, you have done what you have to do, and then afterwards, no disappointments or,
Correct.
losses.
Yes. Yeah. See, when you do something, when the passion by itself draws you to it, then you are bound by the fruits of your action. Then you develop a great anxiety. There's attachment, isn't it? But when you do something which you're passionate about, but when you do it because you are bound to it, you have a bounden duty to it. You're doing your dharma. You're being true to your nature. Then you're not swayed by passions and emotions. So it is very much possible, sir. I'm full of passion. I'm so passionate with this knowledge, but I'm not swayed by the fruits of my action. The takers or no takers, whether you appreciate or not, it drives me because there is an obligation. I'm driven by a goal, by a purpose. So the sattvic actions are that. Rajasic is where vacillating, you're constantly vacillating with emotions and fluctuations. You get that, Ji?
A simple example, Guruji, I mean, okay, we keep collecting various mementos and memorabilias all over the place and keep looking at them. But the day we are able to just give it away to someone who likes it and not worry about it, I think approximately, I think it describes what I was trying to express.
Yeah, fair enough. Very true. Very true. Yes, Harish Ji, you have something to say?
No, I think everything has been said and said in a much more beautiful way than what I could possibly attempt to. But I just wanted to say this, that the very fact that we are talking so much about the subject and explaining it so beautifully shows that when we are not attached or detached from the subject, then all the reason, everything seems clear and everything seems perfect, and we are able to talk about it. So we're able to express that control is not good, excessive control is not good, attachment is not good. Attachment limits both you and me. It both limits the object of attachment too and suffocates them too, and that's why the reaction. So it's not just that it limits me by making me possessive, etc., etc. So, I mean, the very fact that we are detached is why we are able to, I think, and it explains the fact of what is detachment. So that when you are able to objectively look at the situation, then everything becomes clear. And I suppose that's the most difficult part, to rise above.
Aren't we all great philosophers, but the problem is somebody else's? Isn't it? The problem is when it comes to one's own, what happens to that objectivity and all that philosophy? And that's the key. That's the key. So conscious visitation of these ideas, conscious reflection of these ideas make you ready for moments when life challenges you and presents to you. It's only a preparation. So this knowledge is a preparation. Yeah, Hirenji. Yes, sir.
Just quickly, one of the lessons you said, be a giver, not a taker, right? And that is the stage. Then if you can constantly remember that, probably it will be easier to achieve this kind of a state in life.
Yes, yes, very true. Yeah. How to be unconcerned to the lower is by embracing a higher principle, by getting attuned to something nobler, something grander, something beyond it. So that concept of unconcerned concern, you will only remain unconcerned to the lower when you have developed a concern for the higher. Remember this. So when you appreciate something higher, something beyond it, that's when you will develop detachment to something lower. So detached to the lower when you get attached to the higher. This is how the law works. You can't be free from attachment. You will have to attach yourself to something. But when you attach to the higher, you are detached to anything below that. To the lower, you're detached. But you want to be detached from what you're attached to, pick up something higher. It's like when you're climbing a stairs. When you put your right foot firmly on the higher pedestal, you take your lower foot off, the left foot off. And then you want to take your right foot off, you put the left foot higher and higher pedestal, and then take the right foot off. And that is how. But you have to have a firm footing at some stage. Similarly, your mind needs something to hold on to. That is the very nature. But when you hold on to something, whatever you're holding on to, that causes suffering. Whatever you hold on to, it causes suffering. But you want to relieve yourself from that, pick up something higher. Relieve from that higher. And the highest is, Setharamanji, what is the highest thing that you can develop an attachment to?
BHAJA GOVINDAM, attached to higher. Have worship.
The highest thing you can develop an attachment to is Brahman, the God, the reality. So when you develop an attachment, that's what you say, BHAJA GOVINDAM, or the truth, that's the essence of the scriptures, which is the reality. So if you have developed an attachment to the self, to the higher, to the reality, then you are detached to everything below that. Everything, you're not affected. But now, if you're affected by anything, remember, it's your attachment. This is a thumb rule, how you get along with life. So that's how you know what you're attached to. You know, the world doesn't necessarily behave the way, the world has a pattern of its own, doesn't it? Can you influence its pattern? Vanitama, do you agree that the world has a pattern of its own? When you say the world, what are we talking about?
It has its own pattern, and there are things that you can attach yourself to, and it is what it is, I guess.
The world is what it is. Now, to what extent can you influence its pattern? Can you influence the pattern of the world?
No, it's not under your control at all.
It's not under your control at all. So is it right to develop an attachment to it and expect it to behave the way you want it?
No.
Therefore, what do you advise?
Be detached.
Correct, that's all. Let them be what they are. Let it be as it is. If there is something you can do to influence it, try it. But if you can't, learn to accept it and endure it. That's the very nature. So whatever happens, let it happen. You do your best to influence the outcome. But having done your part, if nothing, leave things as they are. So find solace in your own actions, not in the fact that things are not happening the way you wanted or wanting to happen the way you wanted. So you live a life of perfection. So you're detached. So you're not affected at any stage. Nothing affects you. Isn't it? If you're able to look at it from that perspective, and to be able to have the detachment, you must always be anchored to something higher, higher thoughts. And you let the things pass by. Even this shall pass away. There's the beautiful poem by Theodore Tilton. Do get a hold of that poem by Theodore Tilton. He writes this poem, even this shall pass away. So during the best moments of his life, during the worst moments of his life, all through the stages of his life, he just kept saying to himself, even this shall pass away. He went to the public square, 40 cubits in the air. His own statue was in there. He went in disguise and he saw his own statue 40 cubits in the air. And he said, what is name? It shall pass away, he says. Once a javelin pierced a shield, what is pain? It shall pass away. He was married to a fairest lady, and on the bed with her, he said, what is love? It shall pass away. Every stage of his life, beautifully, he writes it very, very poetically, very beautifully, And he was in his deathbed, and suddenly a sunbeam that fell on his ring, and the ring had this carving, even this shall pass away. So he says, through a divine message, I got this reminder, what is death? Even this shall pass away. So at every stage of your life, you're able to understand that nothing is permanent, nothing behaves the way you wish to happen. So when you understand that, you understand that you have a personality, an entity, an independence of all external other than just be yourself, man. I have a personality. I have an entity. I have an individuality. Let me be myself, not be a slave to factors other than myself. That is detachment, So I think the discussion has only laid the platform, but when we get into the text, the 6th, 7th, and 8th verse, where we talk about it, becomes very easy what the text is saying. So as the verse 6 says, it talks about attachment to the body. I'll come back to it next week, quickly run through it, and then we'll move further into the text. All right? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.